This is where they hung Ned Kelly 140 years ago, in November 1880. The most famous Australian to ever exist. This right here is the trapdoor. They tied the noose around Ned Kelly's neck. They hung him until he was dead. His final words were, "Such is life." They say his last words were, well, I suppose. I much prefer the other famous words that he's supposed to have uttered as his last words, "Such is life." Such is life, such a beautiful last saying. I always said to myself when I was a kid and I found out Ned Kelly, when I was a kid, I was 5 years old, I loved learning about Ned Kelly. It was one of my favourite things as a kid. My uncle would take me on bushwalking hikes and tell me about Ned Kelly's legend. And when I learned that Ned Kelly, his final words were something so hard, such is life. I was 6 years old and I remember saying to myself, if I ever get executed by government, I want my last words to be, "Such is life." Such a good saying, such a good saying. I thought that when I was 6 years old. They say this place was haunted with the soul of Ned Kelly. Welcome to Spooky Town. Population 1. Me, Drew Pavlin. Welcome to Melbourne Jail. This is the story of Ned Kelly's final place, the place he was hung. His final words, "Such is life," uttered from that platform, right behind him. That's where they hung him until he was dead. Just remember this as well, they also held his mother here. They arrested his mother, held her in Melbourne Jail. That's a fact. Very interesting. Melbourne Jail, this dark, frigid, freezing place, was one of the most notorious and one of the scariest prisons, one of the harshest prisons of the British Empire. This is where they hung Ned Kelly. They hung Ned Kelly at the Melbourne Jail. This right here is the Melbourne Jail. This would have been me if I got stuck in London on the bomb threat charges. I've come here with a friend of mine who's a refugee, and I was actually explaining to her that Australia doesn't have the founding fathers like George Washington and, Jefferson, etc. For us, it has often been said that our founding father was Ned Kelly. You see, Edward Ned Kelly, age 25, executed 11 November 1880. I've slept a night in a prison cell before. I've actually slept a night in a prison cell. They kept me in Charing Cross police station in London for one night when they got me on false bomb threat charges. I'll tell you what, it was not fucking comfortable. This right here was where they kept Ellen Kelly, Ned Kelly's mum. They imprisoned her for a number of years, basically as a hostage, because they wanted to get at Ned Kelly. And she was a very sad woman. She lived a very harsh, brutal life on the frontiers of Australia. I'm here in the Melbourne Jail. This is where they hung Ned Kelly. We're going to investigate. They say this place is haunted. We're going to find the exact place where Ned Kelly was hung. They killed him right here and they buried him here. Iron punishment mask. Very spooky. If you see this place, very fucking spooky. Cold, the cells. Very dark, very disturbing. Very disturbing. Thank you. I'm here in one of the solitary confinement rooms. They would keep men in these masks to break their spirits. They would not be allowed to speak to anybody. Very disturbing, very scary and spooky. Back in the day, the pioneering criminologists used to do phrenology, the study of people's skull shapes. They would use skull measurement calipers to examine the heads of criminals. We don't do that anymore. People think it's a very discredited pseudoscience, but it's very funny if you look at the phrenology and the studies that they did. Very deranged. So fucking creepy. This is the cell. This is where they kept Ned Kelly, Australia's most famous bushranger. This right here is the room, the very cell that they kept Ned Kelly in all these years away. All these years ago, Ned Kelly slept right here, where I'm standing, about 150, 170 years ago. And this right here, this is one of the most famous Australians that exist. They say that this man was almost a founding father for Australia. And I love his story, it's a very fascinating story. This right here is the gun used by Ned Kelly in his final siege at the Glenrowan Inn. And that right there is a pistol used by one of the soldiers, one of the police officers actually, who shot Ned Kelly. And if you can see this scarf, This was a fragment of the scarf that one of the escaped hostages used. They used this scarf to alert an incoming train filled with Victorian police officers. Ned Kelly had basically laid an ambush, so there was a train filled with hundreds of Victorian police officers. They had torn up the tracks, and one of the hostages that Ned Kelly took escaped from Ned Kelly's care and went out, alerted the train driver just in time before the train could have crashed. It would have killed probably dozens of Victorian police officers. And Ned Kelly talked about doing an uprising. He talked about literally overthrowing the crown in Victoria and basically marching on Melbourne with a band of soldiers and declaring a kind of Irish-themed republic in Victoria. And if they had won that ambush, who knows what could have happened. And if you see Ned Kelly in his death mask, you see this man had a very strong jawline. It was a very strong... This right here is the Ned Kelly death mask. So this is the mask they took of Ned Kelly's face right after they hung him. And if you can see, he was actually quite a strong built man, quite a handsome figure. Here you find a replica of Ned Kelly's armour, the armour they wore into their final battle. Very, very fascinating. This is the real armour of Ned Kelly, the real Ned Kelly armour when he was shot at Glenrowan.